Hello and welcome back to the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Mary O'Brien. Mary's a passionate advocate for the Australian agriculture sector and was raised on the land. She understands the diverse challenges faced by the rural sector. After spending her whole life working in rural and remote Australia, Mary knows country blokes. She's worked with them, for them and beside them, and most importantly, she knows how to talk to them. This unique perspective inspired the launch of Are You Bogged, Mate, which is aimed to help countrymen connect with support services and break down the stigma associated with seeking help. It all started with an article titled Are You Bogged, Mate, which spread far and wide, gaining international attention. This topic struck a chord and highlighted that while there are services available for suicide prevention, there is a disconnect in the way depression is being communicated to countrymen. Mary and her team want to fix this disconnect. Are You Bogged, Mate aims to boost awareness and start a conversation with the broader community about the rising issue of depression and suicide rates among men in rural areas. Mary and the team are confronting the challenges that countrymen face on a daily basis, talking about mental health and lighting the path to support. Thanks again for your support, and enough from me. I'll hand over to Mary. Mary, thank you for joining me on today's podcast. So I've gone with the definition for this, your leadership pathway. So let's start at the beginning if we can. Give me some sense of your leadership and its beginnings.
Well, I guess that's probably a difficult question for me to answer because I don't really see myself as a leader. I guess what I'm doing now, I'm trying to do the best that I can, but it all happened quite by accident, and all I did was write an opinion piece. So I guess it probably started from brutal honesty, which I'm reasonably well known for. Possibly too honest, but that's I guess what got me into the mental health space, and specifically the rural men's mental health space that I'm in now, is just writing an article that was open and honest.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will share that link to the article in the podcast description for to help people engage with where you're at. What was the driver for you to write what you wrote? And so, and why I ask this is, outsider looking in, I personally see you in a leadership space, but that's just a personal view for me. And it's interesting that in my travels and in the discussions I've had a few people come on and say they're reluctant leaders or don't label themselves that way, which is fine. But what drew you to writing the article and then the profile and notoriety that came with that?
Well, I guess the work that I was doing in spray application was taking me around the country, mainly speaking directly to men in sheds, rural men. And we unfortunately had two suicides in my region of reasonably prominent men. And I guess it was the shock and watching the community try and deal with that sort of spurred this. And I'm not sure why these two men in particular. Maybe it was the role I had traveling around, vast areas of Australian broadacre agriculture, that I just decided to look into it, because I've certainly lost people close to me throughout my life to suicide. So this was certainly not my first experience with suicide, and it wasn't that it was particularly close to me, but maybe it was that broader picture of, well, wow, I travel Australia talking in agriculture, and we've just lost two men in 3 weeks over Christmas, which is a pretty tough time to lose people at the best of times, regardless of how they pass. So I guess it was that desperation to say, well, what's going on here, and find out. So I went on a bit of a journey of discovery to, I guess, upskill myself and look for different things. Was there a course I could do? Was there something I could read? How could I know if someone was going through this, and potentially what could I do to stop it? So I guess I went looking for ways to upskill myself, and everything I read I just didn't agree with, and sort of thought, well, that's not how these blokes work. That's rubbish. Used a harsher word than that, but essentially I just read all this information written by people with qualifications in that space, because to this date I have none. I've got a science degree and Masters of Ag and etc., but nothing in mental health. And so I just sat down and I wrote an article, and I just told people what I thought and what I thought of I guess, the mainstream approach to rural men's mental health. And it turned out a few people agreed with me. So I guess that's what spurred me to write that article, was watching the grief and loss in my own community.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and it helps build a context to the work that it is that you're doing. And you said that you've travelled a little bit for the role that you're in now, and I'm I'll make a guess here, educated guess, that you've probably met some leaders in your travel. So taking all that together, how would you define leadership, Mary?
Look, I've certainly met a lot of leaders of um, different colours, different stripes, and different persuasions over my time. And I guess, yeah, I certainly meet some in this role, but I've probably, if I can bravely say, met better ones in before I started doing this. And I think for me and for what I see in other people, and I certainly don't think that I embody this at all, but to me, good leaders inspire others to do their best or to do better or to be brave or to take steps that they may not have if they didn't have that support. So, um, a few great leaders that spring to mind for me, that's one of the things that's common, I guess, across them, is that they don't just tell you what to do, they encourage you to do it. And they'll take your ideas on board, and I guess they probably listen, and yeah, they really do inspire people to, you know, you can do that. Way you go. Great. Good on you. So I guess that's something that, has happened for me personally, that people that I respect and look up to have done that to me. And certainly with the Are You Bogged Mate thing, said, well, you can do this, because I was like, I don't even do this. I don't do mental health. That's not what I do. And they're like, yeah, you do. Way you go. I'm like, okay. So otherwise, it would have just been an article, and I'd still be answering phone calls about it, but not doing anything about it. So it was that having people around me who encourage me to do something, or to, I guess, aspire to change, make a change.
Thank you for that, Mary. I was just thinking for a second there. This kind of links in very nicely to some previous discussions I've had around the process of lifelong learning. So, an ability to want to learn and get engaged with whatever it is you need to help you, either in a professional context or in a personal context, or whichever world it is that you're in at that point in time. And it sounds like you had that light bulb moment to get involved in the mental health space. You wrote the article, you wrote, obviously, and I've read it, it read like it came from the heart and from experience, and it's something that resonates with people. So when you write that way, I think it hits people where they live. If you get my meaning there, that they connect with what you're saying. They may not have had the same experiences, and I think once that kicked off, it sounds like you were hungry to learn more, and that's necessarily another trait of effective leadership. In my estimation, and this is just my a personal view. Do you believe that your experiences in your current position and those in previous work roles that you've had have shaped your thinking around leadership? Is that something that you gave a lot of attention to when you're dealing in the area of preventing suicide and talking about better mental health, particularly among blokes?
I guess leadership is not something that I ever focus on or ever really have focused on, I guess. To me, I think everyone should aspire to do the best they can every day. Some days don't go so well, but at least if you can get into bed at night and say, look, I did the best I can with the knowledge and resources and skills that I have today. You know what? Tomorrow I might do better. Next week I might do even better. But today I did the best I can. So I think it's probably, yeah, it's more about everybody having a go. And so I guess I've never really thought too much about leadership. I guess it's more about those qualities and traits in people. And so integrity and honesty are probably the two most important things that I could see as traits for anyone, and particularly for leaders. That if you can't be honest with people about, you know, how they are going or how you are going, or the goals that you want to achieve. Like if you can't be honest with people and say, you're actually doing a pretty rubbish job, let's see if we can fix this, or, you're doing a great job, keep that up. So I think honesty and integrity are probably the most key things that I guess everyone can strive to, and not just leaders, or aspiring leaders. And I think a lot of people are probably, leaders, and they don't even know that. So um, that because they have those qualities that I value anyway in leaders, integrity and honesty.
Yeah, look, I couldn't disagree. In fact, I think from experience, and this is a personal view, of course, that it's the application of those skill sets in your life. Like you said, having integrity, being known as someone of integrity and honesty they're good human traits to have, irrespective of whether or not you're in a leadership role. But I think where the jump is to leadership is the application of those things. So are you acting with integrity and high ethics in your role as a leader? Are you being honest so that the people around you know that there's no BS in what you're saying? Because I think Aussies in particular, we pick up disingenuous, non-genuine people very quickly in our travels. That aside, and I'm not saying that that's not important. One thing that came to mind, and I like you freely admit I don't have experience here, but the word resilience tends to come up a lot as a trait that effective leaders have. Is that something you've seen a lack of, or lack of skills in amongst the people that you've worked with, not just in your current role, but in your travels as a professional person, studies, and all the rest of it? Is resilience something that is something that you've taken some time to engage with?
Look, not really. I actually think it probably needs a bit of a holiday. It's probably the most used word, and particularly in the mental health space. Resilience, resilience. We've got to build resilience, and um, I think if you, um, I don't know, maybe this is all part of the big picture resilience thing, but it's not a word that I like to use a lot. You know, we see communities across Australia that are affected by bushfires or floods or droughts or whatever, and everybody's on television, and the mainstream media is saying, oh, but these country people, they're resilient, and we've got politicians standing up there saying we're resilient. And you know what? Even the toughest metal has a breaking point. So I think we constantly expect country people in particular to be resilient. They're tough. Yeah, they are. They're bloody tough. But everybody has a breaking point. So I guess I don't focus on resilience so much as one step at a time. And that's something that I speak about is one step at a time, that we don't have to see the whole road. And the analogy that I use is, I can drive from here in Dalby to Longreach in the middle of the night when it's pitch dark, because I have lights on my ute. It doesn't matter how good those lights are. When I turn them on here, I can't see Longreach. The only way I'm going to get there is to keep moving. Because even if my lights are brilliant, if I sit here and whinge that I can't see Longreach, I'm never actually going to see Longreach. So it's that, just keep plodding. And if that's all you can do, you're only going to see a little bit of the road at a time. Sometimes you might see a bit more if the road's a bit straighter. Um, but it's that ability to keep going. So whether we want to define that as resilience, but it's giving the hope. And you know what? There are people to help you put better lights on that vehicle to get you there. There are people to give you maps to get you there. So there's all of these things that contribute to how you get there. And I know, look, I guess that is probably building that resilience, but it's not something that I focus on a lot. Um, I guess with myself, it's probably do as I say, not as I do. But for me, it's like I've got a lot to do in the next week or two or the next month. I know I'm not going to get any downtime. So I'm going to swallow my cement pills and I'm going to push through, because I know at the end of that, I can get a break. So, um, yeah, I don't know, is that just taking stock of what you can and can't manage in your life, and accepting the things you can manage, and I guess accepting the things you can't manage as well. Is that resilience? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure I have a proper definition for it.
Oh, and please don't. I didn't mean to mislead you here. I don't have a definition either. It's something it's a term you hear a lot, and it's good to get some grounding from someone who has that experience of working with and engaging with people in rural and regional Australia. This is um, something I think that is missed sometimes, particularly from city people that don't understand what living outside of an urban area can mean. The issues that rural and regional Australia face. Now, I've had some experience in rural and regional Australia. I'm not comparing, and I'm not saying mine matches yours to any degree. But yeah, it was interesting to me that the things that I read often on LinkedIn, the things that I do for my own research, that resilience word tends to come up quite a bit, and I think there's assumptions made about certain groups. And like you said, if a rural or regional community goes through some tragic event like a bushfire or floods, oh, they're resilient because they're rural and regional folk. Well, there is I guess that tipping point, and recognizing where that's coming is where we need people like yourself in the roles that you do. I'll call you a leader if you don't mind me saying that. You may not view yourself that way,
Thank
but
you.
you need people to step up and do the things that you're talking about. And without the formal title, and definitely was being facetious before, I think the people that step up are engaging in that leadership process, even though they don't have the title, and you don't need it to do the process of leadership, if you get where I'm coming
Mm.
from. And I'm sure you've seen those people when you've been in situations where there has been some kind of natural disaster post that process. Do you, I guess spotting them is easy because they're the ones up front directing, getting involved, putting in the 28 hours a day to get some stuff done, and not having enough hours in the day to do what they need to do. Does that sound reflective of the what you've seen in your travels, Mary?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I guess my really strong sense of justice. And so this is where I guess my sense of justice and my brutal honesty can often clash. That if I see something wrong or something not right, I've got to say something, or I've got to do something. I've got to pull somebody up and go, even just people being idiots in a shopping center. I'm like, hey, 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 knock it off. What are you doing? Like, I just can't see injustice. Some little old granny getting pushed around. Like, no, no, wait up. So it's that sense of justice that, particularly when people go in, for the throat on country people, I'm like, hang on a minute. And I do this for anyone that you don't know what crap is in their bucket. So in my presentations, I talk about buckets, and everyone's got a bucket, and we don't know what's in their bucket. So if they suddenly, have a meltdown or, lose their shit, if I can use that word, over something that we might think is insignificant, we actually don't know what else is in their bucket. They might have all this other stuff that we don't know about, and people are like, what's wrong with them? Like, overreacting. Well, yeah, they might be, but they might also have all this other stuff that we don't know about. So I guess it's having that little bit of empathy and saying, hey, you know what? Everyone's got their cross to bear, and you don't know what they've got. And I think particularly with social media, it frustrates me to see these keyboard warriors, and they're having a go at somebody that they have never met and were never likely to. They're having a go at farmers or irrigators or, intensive livestock or something, live export. They're having a go at something when they know nothing about the industry. And having worked in the cotton industry for many years, I've seen this countless times. And, I just throw that open door policy. Come and we'll show you. Come out and talk to us and we'll show you. So, yeah, it's that sense of justice and possibly a little bit too honest, that not politically correct. And I'll just, I guess, pull people up and say, no, hang on, I'm not going to have that. So
You can never be
prepared to
too
stand
honest,
up.
Mary. You can never be too
Oh, no,
honest.
apparently you can. I think you can, apparently. But yeah, I'm prepared to stand up and swing the bat, I guess. So,
Yeah, that's a classic I guess position that people taking a leadership stance are doing. They're the ones willing to be risk takers in that space. And again, without the formal quals and definitely experience around mental health, poor mental health issues generally speaking, but from my experience, having worked in the seafood industry, I like the analogy that you don't know what people are carrying in their bucket, and you don't know when something very small is going to make it overflow, and then you get that negative reaction that you might see from an individual that you might even know that you go, hey, this isn't typically like that person to be this way. You just don't know. And the fact that we have people like yourself and others that are prepared to facilitate conversations and ask a simple question, are you bogged or are you okay? And um, opening up that conversation it's a very difficult thing to do. And speaking for my tribe, blokes are not good. We're not good at having those conversations, and we're not good at self-care, and that requires some assistance and some help and people to take leading roles. And I can only say thank you for the work that you do on behalf of human beings that need that help. Let me ask you something. And again, this is from you having lived a life in the ag and rural regional Australia. Human beings being what they are, do you believe that leaders are born or they're made?
I think we probably see a little mix of both, but I think as a general rule, probably not something I've given a lot of thought to, but I think that there's probably a very clear distinction between those that are born and those that are made. And sometimes we get some that are a bit of both. But I think most are probably born, to be honest. We will get some outstanding leaders who are made and never sort of planned for it, or accidentally ended up in the leading roles that they've had. Um, but I think, yeah, that their life experience or whatever, for one reason or another, has probably thrust them into that. And a good example that just brings to mind would be Daniel Morecambe's parents. They never meant for this. They never wanted this, God forbid. But they've ended up being leaders in an area that they, never dreamt that they would. So I guess we do get one made like that. But I think there's a we probably all know family members or friends, or even watching small children now. There's a leader. Um, just is some a friend of mine, her children come to mind. There is a clear leader, and she is either going to run a prison gang or be a CEO. Like it's very distinct. So there's I guess there's some that are born and some that are certainly made.
So just to end the podcast, and thank you for sharing your journey with us around leadership and the work that you do. Do you, in your travels, do you identify people that you believe can help the cause, and can you spot talent that way in terms of people that can be leaders in the space in which you work to help promote what it is that you're doing? Do you actively see that when you engage with people?
Sometimes, and I guess I certainly do get approached by a lot of people who want to work in this space or work with me. And my I'm a big believer in trust your gut. Um, you know, don't believe your head; it overthinks things. Never believe your heart; it's dumb as anything. Trust your gut and go with your gut. And so, to me, the people who usually approach me are not the people that I want. And so I have, I guess, stumbled across people that I think, you know what, I actually think you might have what I'm looking for. And if I was looking for people, I probably wouldn't advertise, because the people who applied for a job that I advertise are not the people I want. And look, I've certainly had people come up and say that they want to get into something, or want to get into speaking or things like that, and they want to lead in this space. And um, have a conversation with them and find that, you know what, there's actually something else that you're really good at, and you can tie this into that and develop a career or build something worthwhile for yourself and others through that. And so that's been actually quite interesting, where I've had people say, "Oh, I want to be a keynote speaker," and so how do I start? And so we've been able, I've been able to sort of say, well, what about this, and what clubs are you in, and maybe start this, and so that's really good. But yeah, I certainly do come across people who don't even realise the difference that they're making, and I love finding those ones. And sometimes you just find people who, yeah, you can just tell that there's something there, and whether they're recognised for it or not. And yeah, so there's quite a few little award things around Australia, and so I love finding people like that and just slotting them in for those sort of awards. And they next minute they get an email and go, how does anyone know what I do? Um, so yeah, I do keep an eye out for people doing something different and unique as I travel the country, because there's some great stuff going on out there, and it might only involve 10 people, it might involve two people, but it might involve 2,000. There's some really, really good grassroots stuff happening around the country.
Mary, I appreciate that, and thank you for speaking with me today. Appreciate your time, mate.
No problem at all. Happy to. I really, like I said, I don't see myself as a leader, but I certainly know some great ones. So yeah.
My thanks to Mary for sharing her leadership insights with us today, and as always, my thank you to you for supporting the podcast. If you like the content, please drop a like or subscribe. Have a great week, look after yourselves, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode of Talking Leadership TV.